By the summer of 1943, at sites like Camp Crossville, Tennessee, the war of ideology was being fought not with bullets, but with sugar. A German soldier, hardened by 2 years fighting the brutal desert campaigns in North Africa, stared with deep fascination at the brown liquid fizzing in a glass bottle. Having subsisted for months on meager rations of hard biscuits and ersatz coffee, the sweet, carbonated drink known as Coca-Cola represented an impossible luxury made real. He learned it cost 5 cents from the camp canteen, the same price, guards informed him, that American children paid with their weekly allowance. Across the burgeoning network of American prison camps that summer, 371,683 German prisoners of war would confront a tangible reality that fundamentally contradicted every message Nazi propaganda had disseminated regarding American weakness and decadence. They discovered a nation where ice cream was a routine dessert, where soft drinks were ubiquitous everyday beverages, and where candy bars were so common that guards distributed them freely. These simple foods, luxuries that most German children had never tasted, systematically demolished the core tenets of Nazi ideology far more effectively than any Allied propaganda program could hope to achieve. The staggering mathematics of American industrial abundance were being written in carbonation and refined sugar, in chocolate and frozen cream, revealing that German deprivation was not a noble sacrifice for fatherland, but rather a needless, crippling suffering. This initial amazement at American confections would quickly evolve into a profound psychological transformation. The rapid collapse of the Desert War, the Africa Corps surrender in Tunisia during May 1943, had delivered approximately 250,000 veteran German and Italian soldiers into Allied captivity. These seasoned desert fighters, who had relentlessly pushed the British back toward Egypt under Field Marshal Rommel's leadership, fully anticipated the harsh treatment and starvation promised by Nazi propaganda. Instead, within hours of their surrender, they encountered the pragmatic reality of American logistics, the ubiquitous K-rations. The standard American combat ration, often the subject of complaint among U.S. soldiers, nonetheless contained unexpected treasures: crackers, processed cheese, candy, fruit bars, instant coffee, sugar tablets, and cigarettes. For German soldiers, who had subsisted on minimal rations for months, these emergency provisions were immediately treated as an unimaginable feast. According to military records, the systematic feeding of enemies with superior food began instantaneously. At the processing camps in North Africa, the U.S. Army served pancakes with syrup, fresh eggs, and milk, staple foods that had utterly vanished from German military rations years earlier. The psychological impact of this abundance would only be understood later, sowing deep confusion about American resources. A German officer later testified to the International Red Cross, stating plainly, "We expected to be starved as prisoners. Instead, the Americans fed us better than our own army had." This initial confusion quickly escalated into an intensive education in American industrial capacity. The Liberty ships mass-produced at unprecedented rates, with one vessel completed every 42 hours at peak production, transported this message of abundance across the Atlantic in the summer of 1943, ferrying up to 30,000 prisoners monthly to the United States. Naval records confirm that prisoner rations aboard these ships matched or often exceeded standard crew provisions, totaling approximately 3,500 calories daily, including fresh bread, meat, vegetables, and coffee served with sugar and milk. The ship's advanced refrigeration systems, standard equipment on American vessels, maintained fresh foodstuffs throughout the 2-week crossing. Most remarkably, documented accounts confirm that ice cream was served to the prisoners on multiple occasions during these Atlantic crossings. The log of the USS General M.B. Stewart from July 1943 specifically records serving ice cream to prisoners on July 4th, utilizing the ship's dedicated ice cream maker that produced 10 gallons per batch. For men who had not tasted ice cream since before the war, this frozen dessert, served in the middle of the hostile ocean, served as an unforgettable, stark lesson in American logistical superiority. When German prisoners of war docked at American harbors, specifically at ports like Norfolk and Newport News, they were immediately confronted by an industrial reality that Nazi propaganda had declared utterly impossible. The sheer logistical capacity of the United States defied understanding. The Norfolk Naval Base, a massive installation covering 4,300 acres with extensive waterfront facilities, processed more cargo daily than many major German ports managed over the course of a week. Within the port exchanges, simple shops designated for dock workers, the prisoners glimpsed shelves heavily stocked with mass-produced confectionaries from industrial giants like Hershey, Mars, and Nestle. Military procurement records from 1943 confirm that these exchanges maintained dozens of candy varieties, selling them at a standard national price of 5 cents for most candy bars, the identical cost charged across America. The subsequent journey inland by train provided an equally potent education. Unlike the dehumanizing cattle cars utilized for transport across Europe, German POWs traveled in standard passenger coaches, where the dining cars served full, hot meals. Documented menus from July 1943 show offerings of fried chicken, vegetables, pie, and coffee, leading the prisoners to discover this was not special accommodation, but merely standard American rail service. The prison camp system constructed across the continent housed the POWs in conditions that consistently exceeded the requirements mandated by the Geneva Convention. Camp Crossville, Tennessee, typical of the larger facilities, included electric lights, hot water, flush toilets, and heated barracks. But it was the camp exchanges, the internal PX stores, that delivered the deepest psychological impact. According to meticulous Army quartermaster records, these exchanges stocked multiple soft drink brands, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, and RC Cola, alongside various candy bars and confections, fresh fruit and snacks, cigarettes and tobacco, and even 3.2% alcohol content beer, with ice cream available where refrigeration permitted. Prisoners earned 80 cents daily for their labor, a rate later raised to $1. With candy bars and Coca-Cola both priced at 5 cents, a day's wage could purchase 16 items, a level of consumer abundance far exceeding anything known in wartime Germany. Coca-Cola, however, emerged as a definitive symbol of American industrial democracy during the war. The Coca-Cola Company mobilized for wartime production on an unprecedented scale. Corporate records document the staggering output of 5 billion bottles produced in 1943 alone. Central to this effort was the military contract, which guaranteed the 5-cent price of Coca-Cola to American servicemen across the globe, a commitment demanding logistical coordination previously unseen in history. For German prisoners of war, many of whom had never encountered the beverage before capture, the ubiquity of Coca-Cola was a profound cultural shock. Within the confines of American camps, regular deliveries were the norm. On work details, prisoners observed the casual consumption habits of Americans from all social strata, who drank it casually in discarded half-empty bottles without a second thought. Vending machines and coolers were visible everywhere, at gas stations, factories, and schools. What truly astounded the technically minded prisoners was the beverage's absolute standardization. Whether consumed in Maine or Texas, Coca-Cola tasted identical, a feat of quality control and mass production exceeding the capabilities of the vaunted German industry. The syrup concentrate, manufactured centrally in Atlanta and distributed efficiently to bottling plants nationwide, showcased an industrial coordination that directly challenged Nazi assumptions concerning supposed American chaos. Historical evidence from the Coca-Cola Company archives confirms the depth of the supply chain. Many prison camps received weekly deliveries ranging from 200 to 300 cases, each containing 24 bottles. Camp Hearn, Texas, for instance, consumed approximately 7,000 bottles weekly during the summer of 1943. Beyond soft drinks, the availability of ice cream seemed an impossibility to German soldiers who had not seen the delicacy since pre-war scarcity began. Yet, Army records substantiate that ice cream was served regularly in camps possessing adequate refrigeration during the summer months. The U.S. military deemed this dessert crucial for maintaining morale. So critical, in fact, that specialized ice cream ships were commissioned and deployed specifically for the Pacific Fleet. This focus on comfort extended even to the continental camps. At Camp Shelby, Mississippi, the 4th of July celebration in 1943 provided German prisoners of war with a vivid, unsettling demonstration of American material supremacy. They watched, often in disbelief, as hand-cranked freezers produced gallons of ice cream using copious amounts of ice, salt, cream, sugar, and flavorings. This casual expenditure of scarce resources, ice in the height of July, and dairy and sugar purely for entertainment, demonstrated an economic priority the Germans simply could not fathom. The operational scale increased quickly. By 1944, many internment camps were equipped with electric ice cream makers. The sheer variety available, including chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, and butter pecan, often exceeded the offerings of German ice cream parlors before the war. Prisoners could purchase these frozen luxuries, paying just 10 cents for an ice cream bar or sandwich. Army procurement records confirm the extent of this abundance, showing that larger camps routinely order between 50 and 100 gallons of ice cream weekly during the summer months, a frozen indulgence that had long vanished from German civilian life. However, the most profound cultural shock was delivered by the unrestricted access to sugar. While German civilians struggled with a strictly enforced monthly ration of barely 280 grams when available in American camps, refined sugar sat in open bowls on mess hall tables for unlimited consumption. Quartermaster records from 1943 to 1945 confirmed camps received 100-pound bags of refined sugar weekly. Camp bakeries utilized the supply liberally, ensuring that cakes, cookies, and pies appeared regularly on menus, and beverages like coffee and tea, along with cereals and desserts, were sweetened without restriction. The extent of this institutionalized abundance is powerfully illustrated by a documented incident at Camp Aliceville, Alabama. In August 1943, pervasive humidity hardened several hundred pounds of sugar, making it cumbersome to use. Rather than implementing the painstaking steaming and recovery methods that would have been standard practice in Germany, kitchen staff simply discarded the unusable supply and ordered immediate replacements. German prisoners working in the kitchen were reportedly distressed and bewildered by this unprecedented level of waste. The sheer scale of American industrial output revealed a democratic abundance that persisted even under wartime restrictions. Major manufacturers, including Hershey, Mars, and Nestle, maintained monthly production measured in the millions of bars. The military alone became a massive consumer, purchasing an astonishing 380 million pounds of chocolate products during the war years. For the modest price of 5 to 10 cents, standard Hershey bars, emergency chocolate rations, and various chocolate-containing candy bars were readily available. Prisoners quickly discovered that Americans possessed distinct preferences among these brands, casually choosing one variety over another, a luxury of consumer choice unimaginable in the heavily rationed Axis nations. This abundance was institutionalized through the monthly distribution of Red Cross packages. American Red Cross records confirm that these standard parcels contained chocolate or candy bars, 2 instant coffees, processed cheese, crackers, canned meat, cigarettes, and soap. These packages supplemented regular rations, providing luxury items that significantly exceeded the basic provisions afforded to German civilians. Thanksgiving 1943 served as a profound demonstration of American holiday abundance and national coordination that dwarfed German organizational efforts. Army records confirm that all prison camps served a traditional holiday feast identical to that received by American servicemen worldwide: roast turkey with stuffing, mashed potatoes and gravy, sweet potatoes, cranberry sauce, vegetables, pumpkin pie, coffee, and milk. The logistics required to provide this level of traditional cuisine to 425,000 prisoners of war, alongside millions of American servicemen, showcase exceptional organizational capacity. The fact that German prisoners received the same meal as American soldiers emphasized a fundamental equality of treatment that stood in direct ideological contradiction to Nazi racial hierarchy. This generosity continued through Christmas 1943, when an unexpected outpouring of humanitarianism materialized as American civilians, church groups, and various civic organizations sent packages directly to the German prisoners of war. The American Friends Service Committee alone spearheaded a massive humanitarian effort, distributing 50,000 Christmas packages to enemy prisoners of war. These carefully assembled parcels typically included items such as homemade cookies, candy, essential toiletries, games, books, cigarettes, and writing materials. This charity extended deeply into local communities surrounding the camps. In Tonkawa, Oklahoma, townspeople delivered fresh, homemade treats directly to the German prisoners housed at Camp Tonkawa. And in Hearne, Texas, church groups brought Christmas cookies and candy to Camp Hearne. This profound civilian kindness shown toward men fighting against their nation fundamentally challenged the core tenets of Nazi ideology. Americans, many of whom had family members actively fighting on the front lines against Germany, nevertheless extended charity to these German captives, demonstrating a powerful national strength rooted in mercy rather than vengeance. As domestic labor shortages intensified, German POWs were increasingly utilized outside the confines of the camps, granting them an unprecedented first-hand view of American food production. By 1944, approximately 100,000 prisoners were deployed to work in agriculture and food processing, gaining intimate knowledge of the sheer scale of American abundance. In Michigan orchards, for example, prisoners picked cherries destined specifically for maraschino production, those bright garnishes topping ice cream sundaes. The volume of this output staggered them, witnessing single orchards producing tons of fruit intended purely for decorative purposes. At canneries, prisoners observed quality control standards that often rejected perfectly edible food for only minor imperfections. Del Monte records from 1944 reveal that roughly 15% of fruit was rejected for canning due to size irregularities or minor blemishes, typically relegated to animal feed. Further inland, sugar beet processing in Colorado and Nebraska exposed them to agricultural mechanization, far exceeding German achievement, with single farms producing more sugar beets than entire German regions. These prisoners learned that American sugar production, derived from both cane and beets, reached approximately 7 million. German prisoners, often assigned to labor details near schools, witnessed a casual abundance that defied their understanding of wartime rationing. They observed the early organized precursors to the National School Lunch Act, formalized nationally in 1946, where American children routinely received hot lunches, complete with milk, protein, and vegetables. The systematic provision of fresh milk to children daily became a profound operational symbol. This organizational feat, dedicated purely to domestic welfare, demonstrated a logistical capacity far exceeding what Germany could achieve even for critical military supply chains. More striking still was a casual abundance. Some school cafeterias offered ice cream for additional purchase. The concept of children buying frozen desserts while German youth faced acute food shortages, creating a profound impact among prisoner observers. When minimum security prisoners were permitted to dine under guard at local American establishments, they encountered the reality of democratic consumption. These small diners offered menus that would have graced elite German establishments, yet they were accessible to any citizen with modest funds. Documented 1944 prices reveal this affordability. A hamburger for 25 cents, Coca-Cola for 5, a slice of pie for 15 cents, and a full dinner special ranging from 65 to 75 cents. Crucially, the equality of service contradicted rigid German social stratification. A factory worker and a bank president consumed identical meals, served by the same waitress, at adjacent counter stools for the same price. As prisoners gained access to American publications, they internalized the scale of U.S. industrial output, discovering production statistics that absolutely dwarfed Axis capabilities. American production statistics for 1944 alone documented staggering figures: approximately 7 million tons of sugar, 380 million pounds of chocolate and cocoa products designated solely for the military, over 500 million gallons of ice cream, and 119 billion pounds of milk. The 1943 Coca-Cola output stood at 5 billion bottles, illustrating a reservoir of material wealth that rendered German production efforts, even for essential goods like sugar, insignificant by comparison. German civilians faced severe shortages, with sugar heavily rationed and derived primarily from beets. Chocolate was strictly reserved for military priority, while production of soft drinks and ice cream was virtually non-existent, and milk supplies were severely curtailed. These stark figures, often published openly in American media, serve as a powerful testament to the fact that America's wartime industrial output dramatically exceeded Germany's peacetime production peaks. By late 1944, this economic disparity manifested in profound and unprecedented reversal. German prisoners of war, POWs, in the United States, utilizing earned camp wages, began sending substantial food packages back to their starving families in Germany, rather than receiving them. Prisoners purchased American staples like chocolate bars, instant coffee, and canned goods to mail home. International Red Cross records confirm this extraordinary movement, documenting that German prisoners in America dispatched approximately 11 million parcels, the majority containing essential food items, back to the Reich during their captivity. The impact on German families, receiving American abundance from imprisoned relatives while facing starvation in supposed freedom, fundamentally undermined the credibility of Nazi ideology. American rationing implemented during the war further illuminated the vast gulf between the two societies. While Americans complained about receiving 2 pounds of sugar monthly per person, an allowance more than tripled the meager German ration, when it was even available, American meat rationing, set at 28 ounces weekly per person, still exceeded what the average German citizen received in an entire month. Even under strict rationing, Americans maintained consumption levels that Germans considered an impossible luxury. Office of Price Administration records confirm this trend, showing that Americans purchased 74 pounds of sugar per capita in 1944 despite rationing restrictions, a figure 10 times greater than German consumption. Beyond the widely known Coca-Cola, prisoners encountered the sprawling landscape of America's soft drink industry. Brands like Pepsi Cola, Dr. Pepper, RC Cola, and Orange Crush, alongside numerous regional brands, competed nationwide. This sheer variety, multiple companies producing similar consumer products, was a tangible demonstration of market abundance impossible within the centralized German-controlled economy, supported by advanced technology for carbonation and bottling, with operational plants ubiquitous in every major American city. Standardized capping and labeling systems ensured unparalleled efficiency, allowing single American bottling plants to routinely manufacture millions of units annually. This logistical prowess allowed the distribution network to penetrate every corner of the nation, reaching gas stations, small-town groceries, and remote outposts alike. By the conclusion of the war, American soft drink production soared to billions of bottles per year, equating to dozens of consumer units for every American citizen, an output that demonstrably overshadowed the combined consumer sectors of Nazi Germany. The final, devastating ideological blow landed in the spring of 1945. German prisoners of war, PSWs, held in America witnessed newsreels of advancing GIs distributing chocolate and chewing gum to German children. The profound, unbridled joy of these children, receiving American comforts their own government had utterly failed to provide, completed the ideological demolition. The contrast was irrefutable. American soldiers, penetrating enemy territory, carried surplus candy to give away, while the German state, which had promised total triumph, delivered only famine and deprivation. Furthermore, films of concentration camp liberation showed American troops sharing combat rations with skeletal survivors, demonstrating a fundamental humanity toward the victims of the regime German soldiers had served. Further evidence arrived between 1945 and 1946, as German PSWs returned to a shattered homeland. Medical examinations revealed that many prisoners had gained significant weight during their American captivity, a stark counterpoint to their families, who had lost weight due to starvation and scarcity in free Germany. These returning men carried tangible knowledge of abundance back to a land defined by absolute scarcity. They were often medically healthier upon repatriation than when they were initially captured, returning to families weakened by years of severe deprivation. This physical proof of American plenty versus German scarcity was undeniable. Many prisoners brought final Red Cross packages, chocolate, coffee, and canned goods, which instantly became sacred family treasures. Children who had long forgotten the taste of chocolate received the iconic Hershey bars from fathers returning home. The former German prisoners of war, men who had regularly consumed luxuries like ice cream within American prison camps, emerged as unexpected and powerful proponents for the Marshall Plan. They had observed firsthand an American abundance that defied the zero-sum logic of European history, a prosperity rooted in massive industrial production rather than territorial conquest or resource extraction. Their vivid testimony that the United States possessed the capacity and wealth to rebuild its former enemies was instrumental in securing German public acceptance of American aid. These men understood that American geopolitical power was derived from productive capacity, not merely extractive strength, having seen a society wealthy enough to maintain consumer supply even while prosecuting a global conflict. This revolutionary mental model, focus on creation over conquest, fundamentally shaped West Germany's post-war economic trajectory. The famous German economic miracle, Wirtschaftswunder of the 1950s, was partially built upon knowledge assimilated within those American camps. Former POWs applied lessons regarding efficient American production methods, sophisticated distribution systems, and the political stability generated by widespread consumer abundance. They learned that standardization guaranteed quality and efficiency, that mass production could render former luxuries affordable to the common worker, and crucially, that industrial democracy could decisively outproduce centralized authoritarian control. These profound lessons, often internalized through the simple experience of daily Coca-Cola and ice cream, molded a generation of German business and political leadership. This transformation is exhaustively documented across military quartermaster records, International Red Cross reports, corporate archives, particularly those of Coca-Cola, preserved POW correspondence, post-war interviews, and rigorous academic studies. Arnold Kramer, the leading historian of German POWs in America, concluded unequivocally that this pervasive food abundance was central to their ideological reorientation. The meticulous research confirmed profound historical truth. The sheer casual abundance of American life achieved a complete psychological demolition of Nazi superiority myths that formal re-education programs could never fully accomplish. The statistical disparity between the captors and the defeated was a stark, documented reality, not mere propaganda. The numbers tell an irrefutable story of nutritional contrast during the period spanning 1943 to 1946. German prisoners of war, or PWs, received an average daily caloric intake of 3,300 to 3,600. Their rations included 4 pounds of sugar monthly, 32 ounces of meat weekly, and a full quart of milk available daily. Furthermore, the introduction of American leisure foods, ice cream served regularly during the summer months, and soft drinks available unlimited at just 5 cents each, stood in stark opposition to the plight of German civilians. Their rations, over the same crucial period, were often starvation level, averaging only 1,200 to 1,500 daily calories. Sugar was restricted to 280 grams monthly when available. Meat was often unobtainable or limited to 10.5 ounces weekly. Milk was severely rationed, and luxuries like ice cream or soft drinks were entirely non-existent. This documented reality meant that enemy prisoners consistently ate better than the German populace, a tangible demonstration that American prosperity extended even to defeated foes. The PW's personal experience with American food culture profoundly influenced the consumer landscape of post-war Germany. By 1949, Coca-Cola had returned to West Germany, swiftly becoming a potent symbol of American alliance and modernization. American-style soda fountains and ice cream parlors began to appear across German cities, while candy bars and chewing gum transitioned from novelty items to symbols of national recovery. Crucially, many former prisoners of war leveraged this experience, becoming the leading importers of American food products, having understood their deep cultural appeal firsthand. They recognized that these goods represented more than just taste. They symbolized democratic abundance and modernity. This understanding fueled the introduction of supermarkets to Germany in the 1950s, a movement championed by former PWs who had witnessed the efficiency and variety of American grocery stores. They realized that achieving true democratic abundance demanded entirely new distribution methods, not simply production increases. In numerous post-war interviews and memoirs, German PSWs consistently identified this exposure to food abundance as the most transformative element of their captivity. A former Afrika Korps officer stated the true measure of America's victory over the Axis powers was often recounted not on the battlefield, but in the mess halls of the prisoner of war camps, where profound ideological shifts occurred through mundane observation. A 1975 interview captured this cognitive dissonance. "We expected to defeat a weak, divided America," the veteran stated. "Instead, we found a nation that could give ice cream to enemies. That's when we knew we had lost more than a war. We had lost our entire worldview." This transformation was intensely personal and sensory. Another veteran, interviewed for a 1985 documentary, recalled the experience vividly. "My first Coca-Cola was like drinking the future. It was sweet, fizzing, completely unnecessary, and available to anyone for a nickel. That drink contained everything Nazi Germany wasn't: abundant, democratic, joyful. These testimonies confirm that American material abundance achieved a complete ideological defeat that military success alone could not guarantee. Historians widely recognize the German POW experience in America as a remarkably successful re-education effort, relying on the undeniable observation of a functioning, productive democratic society treating its enemies with dignity, rather than relying on explicit propaganda or instruction. The food aspect was crucial because hunger and satisfaction are universal metrics. Prisoners, intimately familiar with German wartime deprivation, received continuous 3 meals daily, supplemented by canteen purchases, leading to visible weight gain and health improvements. Every standardized meal became a palpable lesson in American industrial capacity and logistical superiority. Every Coca-Cola demonstrated efficient distribution. Every ice cream sundae proved that abundance could be inherently democratic. The men who arrived as fervent Nazi warriors departed as witnesses to genuine democratic prosperity. Their accounts of American abundance in the prison camps, initially seeming fantastic, were validated years later as West Germany recovered and American products flooded the market, solidifying a powerful mythology for the next generation. The enduring legacy of American plenty, paradoxically conceived within the confines of wartime prison camps, fundamentally reshaped generations of German-American relations. Many children of these former prisoners were later drawn across the Atlantic, seeking educational or vocational opportunities in the United States. They arrived, guided by their fathers' incredible accounts of impossible abundance, only to discover that reality fully validated the tales. Supermarkets overflowed with unprecedented variety, soda fountains dispensing lavish sundaes, and candy aisles offering dozens of choices previously unimaginable. This powerful multi-generational impact transcended the individual, profoundly influencing West German business culture by instilling vital lessons regarding consumer abundance, quality standardization, and the dynamism of democratic markets. The celebrated economic miracle was therefore not solely a feat of industrial production, but a deliberate effort to translate that output into tangible, accessible plenty for ordinary citizens. Today, the transformation from scarcity to abundance is complete, symbolized by the ubiquitous presence of over 1,400 McDonald's restaurants across Germany, the universal availability of Coca-Cola, and the normalization of ice cream consumption. Yet, the foundational historical lesson remains potent. Ideological transformation was achieved through calculated abundance rather than punitive deprivation, through kindness rather than cruelty, through undeniable demonstration rather than mere propaganda. The German prisoners who initially found the casual availability of ice cream and Coca-Cola within their American camps unbelievable were witnessing democracy's most formidable weapon, the ability to create such staggering material wealth that it could be shared liberally, even with enemies. This represents history's most unusual victory, a war won through radical generosity, an ideology defeated by the simple luxury of ice cream, and a worldview shattered by soft drinks. These men experienced transformation not through punishment, but through plenty. They arrived convinced of German superiority and American weakness, but departed understanding that American strength derived from a productive capacity so vast that it could afford to casually share or even waste resources. A society capable of supplying prisoners with Coca-Cola for just 5 cents possessed a form of power that transcended conventional military might. The multi-layered ice cream sundae, piled high with excessive scoops, rich syrups, whipped cream, nuts, and a crowning cherry, became the ultimate, undeniable metaphor for American material abundance. This single dessert, where each ingredient surpassed the imagination of a war-starved German, represented routine luxury that felt utterly impossible. The stark reality that former enemies could casually order second helpings while German civilians, particularly children, faced widespread destitution and hunger, underscored the utter totality of Nazi failure and the disastrous cost of their ideology. Former prisoners of war, PS, often cited specific, visceral moments as pivotal to their ideological shift. The electrifying fizz of the first Coca-Cola, the cool, unfamiliar sweetness of a spoonful of ice cream, or the rich, dense bite of a Hershey bar. These sensory data points, delivered directly to the palate, proved infinitely more persuasive than any political tract or formal argument. They had quite literally tasted the promise of democracy, and found it overwhelmingly sweet. The psychological transformation was profound and ultimately irrevocable. Men who had once marched under the banner of the Third Reich returned home not as defeated soldiers, but as unexpected apostles of a new form of revolutionary abundance, carrying the message that true prosperity derived from freedom and market dynamism, not from territorial conquest and military might. America's true secret weapon, they realized, was not the atomic bomb or superior tank divisions, but the sheer capacity to extend such overwhelming material generosity, even to its defeated foes. In the end, the simple, mundane provision of Coca-Cola bottles and overflowing dishes of ice cream within American prison camps achieved a complete transformation of enemy hearts and minds that professional armies could only aspire to through brute force. These German prisoners, initially stunned into disbelief by such excess, became democracy's most credible witnesses, carrying home the undeniable truth that freedom tasted like rich chocolate and effervesced like carbonation. Their experience remains a powerful historical reminder. The most decisive victories are often secured not through destruction or hatred, but through tangible demonstration, through the act of giving, and through the radical, simple hospitality of serving ice cream to an enemy on a summer afternoon. The men who experienced American abundance as prisoners became freedom's most unlikely and enduring ambassadors, forever transformed by the impossible reality of Coca-Cola and ice cream in the camps.